Hello and welcome to this webinar on what is new in Dime.Scheduler. It has been a while since we did one of these, so we've got a couple of new things to show, and we'll also fill you in on what we're going to do in 2023, which is going to be quite an important year for us as a company. But more about that later. Let's go over the housekeeping first so we can get to the fun stuff as quickly as possible. The agenda for today is similar to previous webinars, as we tend to show mostly demos of the new stuff, and today is going to be no different. The main topic is to show you what we've built since the last webinar, which I think was back in April. And as you can guess from the video that you've just seen, we will cover every aspect of the mobile app, followed by a couple of use cases of the new connectors for the Power Platform and Zapier. And finally, as usual, we will share what our commitments will be for the coming year. My name is Hendrik Bulens, and I will be your host for today, and I am pleased to be joined once again by my colleague Tom Taffin. As always, should you have any questions throughout this presentation, there is a Q&A button at the top of this Teams window, which you can use to submit your questions. But to keep the rhythm of this presentation going, we're going to bundle the questions and answer them at the end of the presentation. And as you can probably expect, this session is being recorded and we'll make it available afterwards on our YouTube channel. All right, let's get down to business. And I want to begin with the mobile app. We'll get straight to the action in a minute, but I want to make sure that we're all on the same page here and avoid any confusion. As you know, Dime.Scheduler is all about resource and project planning. The keyword here is planning. We try to make this very clear in all our communication and we mention it in every demo, but questions always come up about the other side of the story, being the resources and projects themselves rather than their planning. And we have always built functionality for the planner and not so much for other personas like the resources. But because all those same questions kept on coming back, we decided last year to make a mobile app that would provide functionality for the resource and not the planner per se. That said, though, our intentions are not necessarily to build a full-blown planning mobile app like our web app, but to have a useful tool for the people on the road to follow up on their schedule in real time. And from here on out, it is up to the community to decide where this mobile app should be headed. We've got a couple of very interesting ideas that could be a perfect case for the mobile app, but we've got bigger fish to fry, so we're not going to pursue them yet until our partners give us the signal that it is time to start developing. But that's enough talk for now. I would like to invite my colleague Tom to the virtual stage and give us an extended tour of the mobile app.
Thank you, Hendrik, and good afternoon, everyone. Glad that you could all join during, I think, the busiest time of year for a lot of you. Special shout out also to our Belgian partners attending today, the few Belgian partners, as some of you preferred watching this webinar instead of the World Cup football game that just started. So we clearly missed that when announcing this session. Luckily, everything is recorded. So as Hendrik mentioned, I'm going to talk about our brand new mobile app. And first, I'm going to show you how it works for the users. In other words, the planned resources. And then I also like to have a brief look under the hood so you understand how it works from a technical point of view without getting too technical, of course. The app is available on the Google Play Store and the Apple App Store, so you can just download it onto your mobile devices. Just take into account that you will need to upgrade to the latest Dime.Scheduler version to be able to connect it to your planning data. So it does not work with older Dime.Scheduler versions. That is, of course, very important to know. I have a tablet here in front of me, and you can also see it on the screen now in the meantime. I already downloaded the app here, so we can just go ahead and open it from here. There we go. Logically, the first step that you would be doing is logging in using your Dime.Scheduler credentials. So for each mobile user on the road, a Forms user account will need to be created within Dime.Scheduler. Once you do that, the resource will receive an email, can reset the password, and then you can log in here in the mobile app. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm just going to log in with my credentials. There we go. And then we can log in. Once that is done, and if your user account in Dime.Scheduler was correctly linked to a resource, and I will tell you how you can do that later on, you will be automatically redirected to this My Schedule overview, where you can see your upcoming planning for the coming days, the coming weeks, or even the coming months. So we can scroll down here where you can see all the appointments that are planned for me. So this is sort of a timeline where every colored block represents one appointment that I have with a certain customer. So this could be service orders, for example, that I have here planned for today and tomorrow, or projects. I have a project planned here with our Gantt chart in Dime.Scheduler. You can see also the color coding is transferred from Dime.Scheduler. So in case of service orders, this would represent the service order type of my orders. For projects, it would be like the project type or the job posting group, which is linked to my project. So all the functionality that you know from Dime.Scheduler will be automatically forwarded here to the mobile app. We can, of course, also look in the past, so I can just scroll up and there we can look at the planning from the past if that would be needed. Now, if we look at one of these appointments, let's take the first appointment for me tomorrow morning between 8 and 12. We can, of course, also have a look at the details of that appointment by just tapping on it. Once you do that, you will get to the appointment card and you'll get a bit more information about what needs to be done and where it needs to be done and when it needs to be done. Again, here we have the timings that are set. We have, of course, the subject of the appointment, which is the same as the subject in Dime.Scheduler. And originally, this was actually constructed by Business Central. And of course, we have a body with a bit more information, which is something I just typed in manually in Dime.Scheduler, where some more information can be handled for the resource. I have the information about my job, so the order number, the task number, and of course also the address where I need to go as a resource. Also note here at the top, we can see the color indicators. So we can see that the blue color of the appointment means that this is a software related order. This is the order type, and that the status of the order currently is initial in Business Central. Now, coming back to the address that we have here, if you would like to see that on a map, we can just click here on the map icon, where we can then see, and we can of course also zoom out a little bit, so we would see that this address is in the neighborhood of Vienna in this case. If you would now also like to navigate to this address using your favorite apps, that is also possible. We have two buttons here at the bottom. If I click the left button here, we define some apps where you can open the address or the coordinates with, so like Google Maps, Apple Maps, or just Google Maps in a browser. So if I click here, you will see that the Google Maps app will open and the map should load. And again, you will see that this address is in the neighborhood of Vienna. Of course, from here, I could start my directions from my current location if I want. Now, if you would like to use another app, that's also possible. If it's not in the list, you can just hit this button here, which is copying the address to the clipboard. You could change to another app like Waze, for example, and just paste the address in that app directly. Then we have two other icons left here on the top. We have one that is representing the resources linked to this specific appointment. As you might know, in Dime.Scheduler, you can link multiple people or machines or vehicles to one single appointment. Well, in this overview, I will see who else is planned for this appointment next to me. I have Damon, which is me in this case. Damon is linked to my user account that I use to log in into the app. And I can see there will be accompanied by Liam in this case for the same appointment. So we are planned with 2 people to go to this specific customer. And then the final tab here are notifications. As you might know, you have the possibility in Dime.Scheduler to send extra information from Business Central along with your job or task that you send to the planning board. For example, if you decide to send some comments from the service order together with your service order task, you could do that. Then you would be able to open them here. You can see, so these could be like your problem comments defining the problem that you need to fix at the customer. I also have some important comments, but maybe not belonging to the problem, or just some informational messages to ask for a certain person, for example. So this is all the information that you can see here currently in the appointment card. So we can close that again. As I said, we're currently looking at a chronological list. In the future, what is coming up in my planning. I could also look at some other views. You can see 4 buttons here at the bottom. So we have a day view, week view, month view. So let's pick up the week view here. This will look quite familiar. It's like more like the Outlook style view where you have your current planning for this week. With the planning for today here and the one for tomorrow, the 2 blue appointments here. Of course, I can now very easily also say, let's switch to the next week by just swiping on my tablet. I can just switch to the next week, the week after, etc., etc. So what is also possible if you need to navigate further in time, we also have a calendar here. You can just click on it and of course scroll through the months. So let's say we want something in February. I want this week, for example. I could just select it like this. There's also a button here to go back to today, to the current week in this case. Next to the week planning, there's also a month planning here, which I like. It's a nice overview because in this overview you can see immediately which days are planned and which days are not planned. Every bullet that you see here represents an appointment with the same color. Again, the color coding of the appointments that we just discussed. So I can see tomorrow I have 2 appointments of the type software. I can see next week I'm working on a project all week because this is the color of my project type. So if I just click on that day, again, I could go to the details of that appointment from this screen. The mobile app loads its data directly from the Dime.Scheduler database. So that means that you will always have the latest version of your planning available here within the app. Just to show you, let me switch back to the week view. And now I would like to switch to Dime.Scheduler. There we go. So I have Dime.Scheduler open here, which most of you will be familiar with. So as I said, my mobile user is linked to this resource daemon here. So what we will do for daemon, we have a look at the planning for tomorrow, Friday the 2nd. I'm just going to move this order away from daemon. So just moving it to somebody else, to Hendrik in this case. And I'm going to plan a new order for daemon. Let's take a service order. I could do this via the standard drag and drop operation. So I could just drag it from here onto the planning board. But what I want to do here is I want to open it in Business Central. And I'm going to assign the resource from the allocation lines in Business Central, just to show you that no matter where it's coming from, it will all end up in the mobile app. So I'm in the allocation screen in Business Central. I'm going to select the line I want to allocate and then the resource, so daemon. I have an allocation date, so let's say the 2nd of December, which is tomorrow. And I want to start at 2 p.m. and we think this will take like 2 hours until 4 p.m. And there we go. So we can close this, close the order. If I go back now to my Dime.Scheduler, you will see, as you used to seeing here, so that the order is now created on the planning board. Maybe we can also fill this gap with another appointment, which we create manually. So let's say item collection. So come to the office to get some parts or spare parts or whatever. And I can, of course, define a color for that. So let's say this is purple. So you can now see we completely changed the planning for this resource for tomorrow afternoon. So if I go back to my app, here. There are multiple ways of refreshing the screen. One of the easiest is basically on the top of the screen, you can just pull it down. So as you can see here, if I move my finger on top of the screen, if I pull it down and release it, you will see that automatically it will load the information. Also, when you change from one week to another, or when you change from one view to another, so if I would change to the month view, it will always reload the planning, so you always have the latest version of the planning. But as I showed, so you can very easily also just refresh the planning screen. If you're not sure, just refresh it and you will get the latest information. So we can see now the item collection here and the new order that I planned. And again, from here, I could click on it. This one has no order linked to it, so I don't see the order details, of course, but I still can see the information that was entered by the planner. Okay, next to consulting my own planning, which I just did. With the mobile app, I can also have a look at the planning of my colleagues. And if I get the correct permissions, of course, from my administrator, but I would be able to have a look at the planning inside of the complete planning inside of the organization. So if we navigate here to the menu on the left side, I can go to the, instead of my schedule, we can go to all planning. And in this case, I have a view that looks a bit like the view that we have in Dime.Scheduler. It's a timeline view where we have our resources here vertically, and on the horizontal axis we have our timeline. So in this case, I can see the full planning within my organization of all the resources where I'm authorized to see the planning. Same story here, so we can very easily scroll to a next week. We can use the arrow buttons here to go to next week. I can use the calendar again, so that's the same story, or I can just navigate back to today if wanted. Now imagine that you have a company with, I don't know, 150 resources or technicians on the road. You might not want to see all of them. You might want to make a sub-selection of resources when you're in your team or resources where you are responsible for. In that case, you can just hit this button here in the upper right corner. This will pop up a list of all the resources where I can now make a selection of the ones I would like to see. So let's just click some of the resources. So let's say these are the resources I'm interested in. All the rest I don't want to see. I can just select them and navigate back to the planning board. They are ordered alphabetically. You can see there are other columns here like department and team. So you can also sort on these columns just to find the correct resources. You can very easily sort on this to say, okay, give me everyone of a certain department, and then I can just select them one by one. You only have to do this once, of course. Next time you start the app will remember the selection that you made earlier. So if we do that and we look now at the planning board, you can see we only have 4 resources left. And before I had a little bit more, of course. You might have noticed that the selection list of the resources, this one here, that it didn't contain all the resources that were available in Dime.Scheduler, which we noticed earlier. So I have like 10 resources here. If we go back to Dime.Scheduler, yeah, you can see we have much more. I have like 21 here. You can see that here on the bottom corner. That is because I assigned a resource filter on the security level of my mobile user. So if you don't want a resource to see the planning of certain other resources or other groups of resources, you can set this up with, for example, resource filters. So if I go to this user, just to quickly show you how it is done, and I have this user here, which is my Tom mobile user. So you can see here at the bottom that I set up this user with a department support. This means that this user will only be able to see resources and planning for those resources belonging to the department support. I will never be able to see any other resources. So this would be the same as if I would go here in Dime.Scheduler, me as a planner, and I would apply this filter on my planning board, support, and filter out. So you will see you get the exact same result, and this results in 10 resources being shown. And the final thing from a functional point of view that I want to show you in the mobile app is the possibility to send your real-time location to Dime.Scheduler. You can find this in the menu again here in the tracking settings. So it is possible to share your real-time location with the planner. So the planner would see a pin on the map where you as a resource are at the moment. Of course, we need to enable this first. This is not enabled by default. I need to consent that I want to do this, and I need to grant permissions, of course, from an operating system point of view on my mobile device. So when I enable this, the system will ask for the needed permissions. And once it is enabled, it will start sending your real-time location to Dime.Scheduler. But of course, I might not want to share this 24/7 with my employer because I only want to know, or I only want to share this during working hours. And that's why we introduced here the tracking calendar. So in the calendar or in the schedule, you will define when tracking can happen and when tracking cannot happen. It's maybe even more important. So you can see here by default, I have a schedule from 9 to 6 in the evening, and on Saturday and Sunday it is disabled. So I could go ahead and say, I'm going to modify that. So let's say Monday is my day off. Don't want to be tracked on Monday, and on Tuesday, I only start around noon. So I'm going to put this one to 12 o'clock, for example, like this. Hit OK and save that. So in this case, you can see now that Monday there will be no tracking, and on Tuesday the tracking will start at 12 until 6 p.m. So this is completely configurable. If you want to be tracked in the weekends, you can just enable it like I just disabled the Monday. Let's say you want to take a couple of weeks of holiday. You could either disable tracking for all the days, but you could also pause the tracking by hitting the pause button here. And the pause tracking screen will allow you to insert a date range where you don't want to be tracked. So I can just add a record here and say, let's suppose we don't work between Christmas and New Year. Let's start here at the 26th, which is Monday. And the end date would be, let's say we come back on the 3rd of January. So the 2nd would then be the end date, as it is inclusive. So in this case, we can now add it. So the app will now stop tracking us between that time period. It is important to understand that the Dime.Scheduler mobile app is depending on the device's operating system to do all of this. And these operating systems tend to make life a bit more difficult from time to time. So the more you use the app, the more it will actually allow you, or it will send updates in the background. It also depends on other parameters like battery levels and network availability. There are really dozens of other parameters that could influence whether or not the app will send updates regularly. But the more you use it, the better it will work. Now, if this is the first time you use it and you want to test it, there is a button here, Share Location Now. So that will share the location with Dime.Scheduler. So if I just go back to Dime.Scheduler, we have our map here, of course. Let me just zoom out and navigate to where I am at the moment. There we go. So if we look here on the map, there is no pin at the moment. So let's see what happens if I just hit that share location button. You will see once it's done, you get here the successful message. And if we now go back and all as well, now we can see that indeed there is a pin now here in the city center where I'm at the moment, where my mobile device is at the moment. Be aware that in order to see the real-time resource pins on the map, you need the advanced map option in your Dime.Scheduler license. That is also an important side note there. Now, for everyone involved in the technical implementation of Dime.Scheduler, I quickly also want to show you how it works in the background and what is needed to be able to connect to that mobile app, as I said, without getting too technical. There is one new component that you need, and that is the mobile backend, which you can, of course, install with our installer. So if we go back over, if you go to our installer and I go to the installation tab, which most of you know, I'm closing this one here. Most of it will look the same. There's just one new option here. It says mobile backend. So if you activate this, you will get a couple of new options here at the bottom. Basically, what will happen, this will install an extra website, which will be the access point for the app. So what you need to insert here is what you do for the main application. You put in a name, you put in a port number, where you will want to save the files. And one additional thing, if you want to use the GPS tracking, you will need to enter also the link to your main Dime.Scheduler application with a user and a login. This is like you would set up the Business Central connector. Exactly the same credentials can be used here. So the URL, the user, and the password needs to be entered here. Of course, As you might already know, this new mobile backend will need to be publicly available so that all the devices on the road outside of your network can actually reach it. So if the mobile backend would only be available in your network, mobile phones or tablets will not be able to reach it. So there might be some firewall rules needed. And of course, we always recommend using SSL certificates, proper DNS naming for security. But once you have that public URL for the mobile backend, that is the one that you need to enter also here in this setup field. So this is just a URL where the mobile backend can be reached. And that URL will also need to be communicated to your mobile users, because together with their username, that is the second thing they will need to enter in the app to know, so the app knows where it needs to request its data from. So if we go back to the app and I log out here, the first time a new user will log in after downloading the app, and you enter your email address and your password, the user will get another pop-up asking for that URL. And I can also open it from here in the settings icon here. So basically, the user can just insert the URL which the administrator will provide. Once it's inserted, you can save it and forget about it. So it's there, and then we can log in here with the username and password. Now, there is one final remark regarding the My Schedule view, which I mentioned earlier. In order to get this view when you start the application, where you can see your own planning, there needs to be a link between the user, the mobile user in Dime.Scheduler, and the resource, which is coming basically from Business Central initially, from the master data. That link will be the email address. So if the email address of the user is the same as the one on the resource, the My Schedule overview will be shown automatically when you log in. If not, you don't get this overview. You will be redirected automatically to the all planning overview, which I also shown. The email address in Business Central is taken from the employee cards, just for your information. And that's all I wanted to tell you about the mobile app today. But Hendrik has some other exciting stuff to show and announce. So Hendrik, back to you.
Thanks, Tom. Now, before I move on to the next topic, I just want to mention that everything we're showing today is also available on our documentation platform. There's no time to show everything, but you can check out the release notes that will contain all the links and pointers to the new features. And as far as the mobile app is concerned, we even have a dedicated page where you'll find everything you need to get started with the mobile app. And we went all the way and even made a video tutorial for the end users. Now, the next major item that we've got in store for you today is our new connector for the Power Platform. It's out in preview, so you can go ahead and try it out today. And I'm quite excited about this because it effectively opens Dime.Scheduler to the entire ecosystem and not just Business Central. We can link it to Dynamics Sales, Dynamics Marketing, but we can also link it to your bespoke Power Apps, your flows, and so on. What we've done in essence is expose the same capabilities that we have in our standard connector for Business Central. The difference here, of course, is that you have to click and drag your apps together and then invoke the right actions to get the data into Dime.Scheduler so you can plan your resources and tasks there. Now, another addition that really expands the reach of our planning software is our webhook connector. This connector basically points at the other direction, so you can post appointments produced in Dime.Scheduler back to another system, and that could quite frankly be any system. Any server-side technology that can accept web requests is inside the scope of this connector. And as we'll see in a minute, this webhook connector is going to be quite essential for the bidirectional communication between the Power Platform and Dime.Scheduler. But let's circle back to the Power Platform connector for a little bit longer, because technically speaking, the connector is simply a wrapper around the import pipeline that has been there since day one. And while creating this wrapper, we actually made it possible to use other platforms as well. And Zapier might just be the biggest of them all, and I'll be showing some demos in a minute. But I'm not going to go into too much detail here on the intricacies of the connectors themselves. All you need to remember today is that the connectors are simply an extra layer of abstraction so we can provide our functionality on those platforms. So for example, on the left-hand side of this Power Automate flow, we can see we can add tasks from in Power Platform, while on the right, we can see a sub-selection of other actions that we can use from within the Power Platform. And it's exactly the same story for Zapier, where we can use the output of other systems. We can listen to events and triggers to do something with that usefully inside Dime.Scheduler. But that's the theory, so let me just show you a few simple use cases that should give you a good idea of what can be achieved with these connectors. So let me switch over quickly to my instance of Dime.Scheduler, which I think needs no more introductions, and then we can get ahead and start playing around with the new connectors. What I'm going to do first is use a chatbot that I made with Power Virtual Agents, and then we'll use the input from the conversation to create a new work item that needs to be planned. And I'm going to use one of our classic examples of a company that repairs heaters and air conditioners, and I'll be the customer that wants to schedule an appointment with a technician. So let me go to my tab right here, and then I have to refresh because this page tends to time out. So this is our chatbot in question. I'll go through it very quickly because the good stuff is at the end of the chat. So we can select a topic here and then follow the commands that the chatbot is requesting. So I'll fill out my name and the organization. It's going to be a C job. Then everything's urgent, so yes. And we're going to mention it's the AC unit in the conference room. Then we can wrap up the conversation. So this is all good. Happy with the answer. Give it a 5-star rating, obviously. And then we can close the conversation. Now, once it's all done, this chatbot starts a Power Automate flow. And this particular flow is responsible for taking the input of the chatbot and then create a task in Dime.Scheduler. So when we take a peek there, we should see by now that a new task will have been added to our open task list, which is the one we see right here. And it is a first-class citizen, so we can use all the tools at our disposal to find a suitable resource and date to carry out the work. And when we take a look at the flow itself, which is this guy right over here, you'll see that it's very, very simple. The chatbot starts this flow. So if you open up, it will provide all the answers or all the questions from the conversation. And then we can use those variables and those parameters in subsequent steps. So the new thing here are the last two steps, which are custom actions for Dime.Scheduler. So these two will be responsible for creating the job or some kind of the project kind of entity, and then activities for that project. So these two actions are responsible for adding that record to the open task list, which is now ready for planning. Now I'll plan this task in a minute, but I want to show a second example through Dynamics 365 Service, which I think now is the correct name for the service module CRM. Anyway, this is the tab right over here. And because it's been baked into Microsoft 365, there are really no limits what we can do here. I made a very simple case to plan service cases, but we might as well work with appointments or task entities, or basically anything that is remotely related to scheduling. So if you want to plan your sales staff through leads or opportunities, you can do that, no problem whatsoever. So using my vast knowledge of CRM, let me head over to the service area of customer engagement and then navigate to our cases. And then I'll just go ahead and pick one that's already been made. But everything you see here is standard functionality, so there's nothing really new to report here, except that we can make this case available for planning when we go to the kebab menu, which is what this menu is called, and then check out the flows. And we've made one flow for this particular type of entity. So we made a flow for cases that allows us to send those cases to Dime.Scheduler and make them ready for planning. So when I open up this flow and confirm, you'll see in a couple of seconds, a new case will be available for planning in Dime.Scheduler. So chop chop Power Apps and make myself a new task in the planning in the open task list. So if you go right here, we can see our new case is available for planning. And again, the same story here applies. It is a first-class citizen, so you can use all the tools if you provide the data, obviously. So you can use the map, you can use the resource filters, you can use the capacity. All the things we have in our tool can be used for other work items that do not originate from Business Central. Now let's plan the task that we made in the chatbot. And I think there's no need to explain the basic process. So I'm going to be a little bit rambunctious and just plan it in for a research at random. So I'll pick Mark Hansen here and put him on the books for tomorrow at in the morning time. And surely I do not need to remind you that every time you do something to the schedule on the planning board, we will update the underlying back office system. For Business Central, this is easy to understand how this would look like. But if the work item was made from a chatbot, it might be difficult to imagine how a chatbot could possibly process an appointment properly. So this is where our webhook connector comes in, and joy or joy, the Power Platform can accommodate this too. And I've worked out again here a very simple workflow that is triggered when we post a web request to a Power Automate flow, which is what happened when I planned in this particular appointment from the chatbot. So let me quickly show you how that flow looks like. So the webhook connector invokes a web request to this link, and inside the body, we'll post all the information of the appointment we just scheduled. So in this flow, we can use the context information inside the subsequent steps. So what we've done in this particular flow is just add 3 steps. The first thing that it will do is it will make a new adaptive card in Teams to prompt the email address of a customer. So we can send a confirmation email to the customer to notify them. We'll go to them to fix their AC unit in the morning time. And then to make the picture go full circle, we'll go back to Dime.Scheduler and update the appointment so the planner also knows the appointment has been confirmed, that the resource has been notified, and that the technician will go by first thing in the morning. So the first step is then to go obviously to Teams, and I have to go to this particular channel. If I navigate to the bottom, we'll see our adaptive card nice and shiny in our Teams channel. And you can see the same information of our appointment, but more importantly is the bottom half of the card, which prompts an email address. So this flow will not continue until I hit the submit button or until that flow expires. So let me just quickly enter an email address. And as soon as I hit the submit button, it will proceed to the next step, which will then send an email to this particular email address. So if I open up Outlook, rather sooner than later, we should see an email come in that says to the customer, this appointment has been confirmed and somebody will come by tomorrow morning. So that's the second step. So then the flow will proceed to the final step, which is to update the appointment status to confirm in Dime.Scheduler. So what we're doing basically here is use our color coding scheme to just update some one of these indicators so the planner just knows by looking at the appointment that it has a certain status. So if we go to the planning board, we'll see this appointment now has this orange underscore item, which represents the status of confirmed. And just like that, almost out of thin air, we made something that goes full circle. And ideally, I would say some of the data in these workflows should trickle through to Business Central, but that's a topic for another day. And instead, I would like to show some of the possibilities of the Zapier platform. Zapier focuses mostly on automation and integration. So it's actually more of a competitor for Power Automate than the Power Platform as a whole. But the ecosystem in Zapier is much bigger and extends way beyond the reach of just Microsoft's products. And I'll show you with 2 short, simple, sweet demos. The principles and the workflows are practically the same. We're just going to link applications together by clicking or dragging our zaps together, which is what Zapier calls their flows. And our first demo couldn't be any more simple. I made a little account on cal.com, which is a simple appointment scheduling booking app. And I want to make sure that appointments booked on this platform also goes back to the planning board and Dime.Scheduler, so we keep our general overview and know what's going on with the schedule of our entire organization. So what I've done to do that is I made a zap. And if we go to this tab, you'll see what I've done. This is really rocket science. So we're going to listen to a trigger that is invoked by cal.com itself. Through the Zapier platform, we will be notified of this event, and then we can do something useful with it in Dime.Scheduler. In this case, we'll just make an appointment on the planning board. So it's just a one-to-one mapping operation here. If I go back to our scheduling app, let's book a meeting for tomorrow at say noon. And then we do fill out some information. And then cal.com will do all the good stuff. It will send an email to both parties. It will invite you to a meeting request, but it will also notify Zapier, and Zapier will make sure all the subscribed events, all the zaps will be invoked. So in this case, we should see an appointment go back in our planning board. So for Linda Martin tomorrow at noon, we have this new appointment that was created from this zap. I have one more example for you today, and it's a little bit different than the previous ones. Instead of creating new work items, we're going to add a form that customers may use to add notes to their appointments and basically communicate with everybody involved in that work item. What I've done is I set up a type form, which is a very fancy forms kind of style that's sort of almost chat body style. And at the end of the form, we will submit that form and add a notification to that appointment. So we can see on the appointment in the planning board, this notification that the customer has put in from this type form. So I have to take a little peek at the order number. So let's use this one, for example. The order number is service order 23, which was generated in BC, obviously. So I have to enter my order number. Let's say take care of the dog. He looks cute, but it might bite. And then let's say it's an FYI. It's not too important. So as soon as I hit the submit button, Typeform will do all its things it does by itself, but it will again notify Zapier of this event. So we'll listen to the new form collection and then add new notification to this particular service order that we provided in the first step. So if I go back to Dime.Scheduler and highlight our notifications panel and then select our appointment, we should see right here in one of the items, the notification has been added from this type form through the Zapier platform, which I think is quite nice. So, but these were all very simple examples, but they demonstrate the power of these platforms quite well. And I can't wait to see what you're going to do with our connectors for the Power Platform and Zapier. And maybe later more will follow. At the top of my head, I'm thinking about if this, then that, but let's see how it goes with these platforms first. Now, let's have a look at what's going to happen next. We seem to have started a new tradition where we make commitments to our partners during Directions EMEA. At last year's edition, we announced we started proceedings on the mobile app and the Power Platform connector. And if we fast forward 1 year, they're both here. And this year, those who came to see us at our booth will surely remember this year's topic was Dime.Scheduler as a service. So we are now committed to getting Dime.Scheduler in the cloud and offer it as a service as soon as possible. And we hope to keep this new tradition and announce at least a preview at next year's edition of Directions EMEA. But we can't commit on a date yet. There's still quite a lot that we need to decide upon in the coming weeks and months. But we're on a roll, so I hope we can bring some good news soon. One thing I can already tell you is that our partners, i.e. you, remain at the center of our business model. This cloud-based version will be gated, and only you will be able to order new tenants or ask for trial versions through the partner zone. So you'll always be in the picture and help guide your customers and prospects, because there still remains the topic of connecting the back office systems to Dime.Scheduler and then tailored to measure, obviously. If I dumb it down enough, the only thing is going to change dramatically is that we will take care of the hosting ourselves. But sometime next year, we will come up with a detailed plan and share it with you. Perhaps we'll organize a webinar to dedicate exclusively to talk about this topic. Now, lately, we've also been giving short demonstrations of our new scheduling optimization engine. And with the feedback we received, we're now going to try build an MVP, perhaps as an add-on to Dime.Scheduler. But the goal though remains to have a separate product that you can plug into standard BC, but the track that we're currently investigating would allow us to go to market faster, and the feedback would also follow more quickly so we can adjust the product accordingly in the early stages of the product's life cycle. And the third part is all about improvements to the BC connector to step up our project planning game. There is a lot of potential there, and I believe with relatively limited effort, we can make great strides. And everything I just said the last minutes can be found on our documentation platform, so you can always check our priorities for the upcoming years. And maybe a final announcement is that we're already preparing a new release with some minor features, and that should land sometime in the first quarter of next year. Now, we're always happy to hear your suggestions, so please do reach out. Both our support and commercial staff tend to reply rather quickly to your inquiries. And truth be told, this year has never been easier to set up our roadmap because you have been quite vocal on what we need to do next, which we like. So keep it coming. And you can start right now because we have a couple of more minutes for some Q&A. So to keep the rhythm going, I'm going to invite my colleague Tom back to give us some insightful answers. So I've written down some more questions we had at the beginning, but let me also pop up the Teams chat here. So Tom, we have one that's about pricing. So does the mobile app require an additional license?
Nope, it is included in the base license. That is a very short answer.
But then with the side note of the additional license for the
Yes.
tracking, right?
Yes, yeah, which I mentioned. So if you want to track your resources, you would need the advanced map additional module in the license. But the mobile app usage itself is included in the base license.
Right. Yeah, with the news stories of the last couple of months, is there other question on the licensing? Should we expect a price revision anytime soon?
Not anytime soon. We will review the pricing when we are ready or almost ready with our cloud product. So the structure of the pricing will remain the same, but of course, as hosting will be added, there will be an increase of the cloud product pricing, and at that time we might review the complete pricing. But the structure, as we know it today, let's say the packs of resources that we have will not be changed.
All right, there's one that just came in. That's a good one, I think. Is the mobile app going to substitute the current Exchange connector?
No, because and you could look at it as if they would do the same. They are informing the resource about what they need to do, but the Exchange connector has the additional capabilities of the bidirectional connectivity. So if somebody puts something in his or her Outlook calendar, it could also be imported in Dime.Scheduler. At the moment, the mobile app is read-only, and there are no plans to create appointments directly in the mobile app. So we don't see it as a substitution. We only see it as an addition for companies where people don't have a mailbox. A lot of companies with technicians on the road, the technicians don't have a mailbox, and hence they cannot use the Exchange connector. So the mobile app is more an addition to that.
Okay. There is a question on the Power Platform. Can we link to-do lists to Dime.Scheduler?
I think it's a question that you can answer better than I can, but I would say yes.
yeah, that's true. Everything that's connected to the Dataverse, everything that the Power Platform can get its hands on, is now inside the scope. So perhaps even Business Central in the future could be used as a way to connect to Dime.Scheduler in addition to the standard connector. So there's really no way of telling how far this will go and how far this will take us. So one of the things that's also on the roadmap is to hear out the community and see what they have to say and how we can make standard connectors. For example, for the CRM application, we can do a lot more there. And make standard functionality, but we don't know yet how far we can go and how far and what our customers need. So that's an open-ended question, but that's something that's certainly possible with a few clicks and drags, and then you're good to go. On the topic, there's another question that's maybe a bit more advanced, Tom. Can you use triggers in the Power Platform connector?
I think I will need to reflect that one back to you.
Yeah. But yeah, triggers for those who are not up to date on the Power Platform connector, it's a way of basically what we showed with Zapier. So you push an event to the Power Platform, so Power Platform can notify subsequent subscribers. Currently, we're just using the actions, but once we have our Dime.Scheduler as a service in the cloud, we'll probably push to have this natively out of the box. The temporary workaround is using the webhook connector, which is much more flexible and opens up any kind of system. So we showed you the integration with the Power Platform. We could do the same thing with Zapier or any application that can accept web requests. So this is the more flexible way, but we'll add more capabilities and we'll add more functions such as triggers in the Power Platform. But that verification process is a bit tedious, so we kept it as simple as possible to get an MVP out. But if you want to know more about that, I'm happy to talk about that for a couple of weeks. So feel free to reach out and then we can have a more in-depth discussion. Maybe one more that just came in. Yep. Are you planning to develop the app in a way that users could update or edit tasks from the app?
There are no plans at the moment, so it's not the goal that we are going to replace existing apps or platforms in the channel. Maybe in the future, and it will depend on your requests or the partner's requests. I would say if we get the question a lot, let's say to change the status, for example, that is maybe something that we could add in the end. But it will certainly never be the goal of creating a full service management app or a full I don't know any other examples you could think about, but maybe some small additions on changing data could be useful. We're waiting for your feedback basically, and if we get the question a lot, well, that's something we will respond to.
Yeah, we could basically say that give the same answer for timesheets, which is a question that's been coming up quite often in demos lately. So the answer there is the same. We're just going to await your feedback. So the more it comes up, the more it's likely that we're going to do. So our roadmap for the mobile app is open-ended. So you decide. So it's sort of a first come, first serve kind of basis. And I don't see any more questions unless you have had other questions in the chat, Tom.
Nope.
Otherwise, otherwise we can wrap up. The good old clock on the wall tells me we have 5 more minutes, so it's a good time to call it a day. So now we're going to lay low for a while and get cracking on Dime.Scheduler as a service. I would like to thank you for attending. Enjoy the rest of your day and hope to talk to you soon. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.